السلام عليكم جميعا أعزائي طلبة الفرقة الثالثة شعب. بنكمل مع بعض المحاضرات اونلاين والشابتر اللي احنا بدأناه last time اللي هو كان بعنوان differential analysis the key to decision making. ده شابتر زي ما احنا قلنا شابتر 12 لو انت بتتكلم في ال 13th edition، او ممكن تقول عليه شابتر 13 لو بنتكلم في ال 14th edition. ودي المحاضرة رقم 10 بالنسبة لنا. بنكمل الشابتر بتاعنا في المحاضرة دي بإذن الله، وهيكون في محاضرة تانية نخلص فيها الشابتر. Last time we had some issues. We had discussed identifying relevant and irrelevant costs and benefits in a decision making. We also had discussed preparing an analysis showing whether a product line or other business segment should be dropped or retained. دول 2 points or the main 2 points that we had discussed last lecture. خدنا الديسيجن اللي هو بتاع whether a product line should be dropped or retained. بنكمل الديسيجنز اللي احنا هناخدها في at the rest of this chapter. تمام؟ let's begin our work with the next slide. Let's start with learning objective 3, prepare a make or buy analysis. In this case, the company faces a decision whether to make or buy a component of a specific product. To make this decision, you have to know some things about this decision. Let's see in the next slide. The make or buy decision. To understand this decision, you have to know some things about it. First of all the activities that the company practices from development to production to after sale service are called a value chain. يبقى احنا بنسمي يا جماعة كل الأنشطة اللي بتقوم بها الشركة بداية من development، بداية من وجود فكرة للمنتج لغاية after sale service خدمات ما بعد البيع. بنسميها all of these activities we are calling a value chain اللي هي سلسلة القيمة. Okay, you have also to know separate companies may carry out each of the activities in the value chain, or a single company may carry out several. When a company is involved in more than one activity in the entire value chain, it is vertically integrated. يبقى لو كانت الشركة بتقوم بأكتر من نشاط على مستوى سلسلة القيمة بتاع الشركة نفسها، فبنقول عليها ايه vertically integrated. في تكامل رأسي. تمام. You have also to know some companies control all of the activities in the value chain from producing basic raw materials right up to the final distribution of finished goods and provision of after-sales services. And other companies are content to integrate on a smaller scale by purchasing many of the parts and materials that go into their finished products. A decision to carry out one of the parts and materials that go a decision to carry out one of the activities in the value chain internally rather than to buy externally from a supplier is called a make or buy decision. Quite often these decisions involve whether to buy a particular part or to make it internally. Make or buy decision also involve decisions concerning whether to outsource development tasks, after sale services, or other activities. يبقى هنا برضو بيقول لي بيديني هنا زي ايه brief كده a decision to carry out one of the activities in the value chain internally rather than to buy externally from a supplier is called a make or buy decision. يبقى هنا the company faces a decision whether to make this component internally ان هي تصنع الجزء دوت داخليا في الشركة نفسها or to buy it from a outsider او from a outside suppliers من مورد خارجي. يبقى احنا قدام هذا الديسيجن. Okay. If the company decides to be vertically integrated, it will attain several advantages. Vertical integration provides certain advantages. An integrated company is less dependent on its suppliers and may be able to ensure a smoother flow of parts and material for production than a non-integrated company. Another advantage. Also, some companies feel that they can control quality better by producing their own parts and materials rather than by relying on the quality control standards of outside suppliers. One more advantage. In addition, an integrated company realizes profit from the parts and materials that it is making rather than buying, as well as profits from its regular operations. يبقى دول these are the advantages that can attain from vertical integration. Vertical integration disadvantages. We can say that the advantages of vertical integration are counterbalanced by the advantages of using external suppliers. It says here that companies may fail to take advantage of suppliers who can create economics of scale advantage by pooling demand from numerous companies. While the economics of scale factor can be appealing, a company must be careful to retain control over activities that are essential to maintaining its competitive position. ده معناه ان زي ما في ميزة لحاجة معينة في عكسها بالنسبة للحاجة التانية. يعني لو الشركة اعتمد على الفيرتيكال integration فهيبقى في ميزة معينة. لو هتعتمد على to get its component from the outside supplier هيبقى في ميزة للناحية دي. تمام. فهي لو اعتمدت على الفيرتيكال انتجريشن هتفقد الميزة بتاعت الايكونومكس اوف سكيل وهتفقد الميزة اللي هي بتاعت to get components with high quality and low cost. تمام. فاحنا نوازن، نعمل balancing between these two alternatives. تمام. وحاجة تانية بيقولها اهو تحت ان لو كان حتى الفاكتور اللي هو العامل بتاع الايكونومكس اوف سكيل اللي هو اقتصاديات الحجم الكبير ده عامل جذاب، فالشركة واجب عليها ان هي تركز على ايه؟ تركز على الاكتيفيتيز اللي هي that is essential، اللي هي مهمة بالنسبة لها عشان تحتفظ بالcompetitive position، بالوضع التنافسي بتاعها. To understand how can we make a decision about whether to make or buy a particular part of a product, let's take this example. Essex Company manufactures a part 4A that is used in one of its products. The unit product cost of this part is direct material $9, direct labor $5, variable overhead $1, depreciation of special equipment 3, supervisor salary 2, general factory overhead 10. The unit product cost equal $30. يبقى هو عطيني هنا information about the unit product cost of this part. تمام. يبقى دي تكلفة لل 1 unit ب $30. We will have some additional information that can help us to make this decision. This additional information will appear in the next slide. Let's continue. The additional information appears in this slide. The special equipment used to manufacture part 4A has no resale value. The total amount of general factory overhead, which is allocated on the basis of direct labor hours, would be unaffected by this decision. The $30 unit product cost is based on 20,000 parts produced each year. An outside supplier has offered to provide the 20,000 parts at a cost of $25 per part. The question here is, should we accept the supplier's offer? يبقى هنا I need to make a decision whether to accept or reject the supplier's offer. To make our decision, let's see the next slide. To make this decision whether to make or buy this part, we will compare the cost of making this part with the cost of purchasing this part. So we will have 3 columns, one of them for cost per unit, and the 2 columns, one for making this part and the other one for purchasing this part. Look at the first line. Outside purchase price equal 500,000. We have 20,000 units multiplying by $25, so the result will be 500,000. This is the cost of purchasing these parts. After that, we will compute the making cost. The making cost depends on the avoidable cost. We have to determine the avoidable costs only. Direct material 180,000, direct labor 100, variable overhead 20,000, depreciation of equipment 0, supervisor's salary 40,000, general factory overhead 0. So the total costs of making this part equal 340,000, and the total cost of purchasing this part equal 500,000. Let's see the details. It says here at the bottom of the slide, the avoidable costs associated with making part 4A include direct materials, direct labor, variable overhead, and the supervisor's salary. يبقى هنا we are depending on the avoidable costs. يبقى اللي هيخش معانا هنا the costs that will be involved in this decision will be the avoidable costs only. هعتمد على التكاليف اللي هي ايه يمكن تجنبها if we not making this part، اللي هم محطوطين قدامنا دول، اللي هم الدايركت ماتيريال، الدايركت ليبر، والفاريبل اوفرهيد، والسوبرفايزرز salary. تمام. These are the avoidable costs. The total of these costs equal 340,000. To be more understood, let's see the next slide. It says here the depreciation of the special equipment represents a sunk cost. طبعا انا هنا حطيتها صفر اللي هو depreciation. ليه؟ لانه كان عاطيني hint كده او عاطيني information، قال لي the equipment has no resale value, thus its cost and associated depreciation are irrelevant to this decision. طالما this cost is irrelevant يبقى I will not include this cost in my decision. عشان كده depreciation equal 0 ما يعتبرش من ال avoidable costs. تمام. طيب let's see more details about this decision. Let's go to the next slide. General factory overhead, we represent this element as an not avoidable cost, and thus it will be irrelevant in this decision. فده بيعتبر برضو تكلفة غير ملائمة. I will not include it in my decision. هنا مكتوب not avoidable and thus it is irrelevant if we decide to make the part. okay. وهو عاطيني برضو information قال لي it will be reallocated to other product, and the decision will not affect اللي هو ال general factory overhead will not affect by this decision. يبقى هو عندي not avoidable cost. تمام. Let's go to the next slide. يبقى أنا عندي كده الكومباريزون هيحصل. I will compare the make alternative with the buy alternative. The cost of making this part equal 340,000. The cost of purchasing these parts equal 500,000. Type to answer the question that should we make or buy part 4A, according to the information, and given that the total available costs are less than the cost of buying the part, so this company should continue to make the part. يبقى أنا هنا قدرت أخد قرار إن أنا the company will continue to make the part internally. ليه؟ Because the cost of making this part inside the company is less than the cost of buying this part from outside suppliers. تمام؟ يبقى في الحالة دي هاخد قرار ان انا ان انا اصنع الجزء ده inside the company. يبقى this way can help me to make the decision of make or buy a specific part of a product. Now we are gonna discussing the learning objective 4, which is preparing an analysis showing whether a special order should be accepted. If the company faces a special order that the supplier introduced to this company, so the company faces a decision whether to accept or reject this special order. To understand how can we make this decision, let's see the details in the next slides. To understand how can we make a decision about whether to accept or reject a special order, we have to know some facts about these decisions. It says here a special order is a one-time order that is not considered part of the company's normal ongoing business. يبقى هنا بيقول ان السبيشال اوردر ده بيبقى حالة طارئة طلبية بتيجي للشركة، يعني مش بصفة مستديمة، وبتحصل يعني مرة بطريقة بالصدفة، يعني مش من ضمن الانتاج المعتاد للشركة. When analyzing a special order, only the incremental costs and benefits are relevant. يبقى هنا we are depending on the incremental costs and benefits to make this decision. يبقى our concern will be the incremental costs and benefits. Since the existing fixed manufacturing overhead costs wouldn't be affected by the order, they are not relevant. عايز يقول هنا ان ال fixed costs will not be affected by this decision or by this order، مش هتتأثر، وبالتالي هتبقى بالنسبة لنا unavoidable cost or are not relevant cost، هتبقى تكلفة غير ملائمة، وبالتالي I will not include them in my decision. Okay, let's see how can we make this decision. We will have this example to show how can we make a decision about whether to accept or reject a special order. It says here, Jet Inc. makes a single product whose normal selling price is $20 per unit. A foreign distributor offers to purchase 3,000 units for $10 per unit. This is a one-time order that wouldn't affect the company's regular businesses. Annual capacity is 10,000 units, but Jet Inc. is currently producing and selling only 5,000 units. The question here is, should Jet accept or reject this offer? يبقى اعطيني هنا some information about this company، وبيسأل should it accept or reject this offer. طيب to make our decision we have to make some calculations that we will see in the next slide. This contribution margin income statement is given, and it shows us the income statement if the company produces its normal products, which is 5,000 units. If the company produces 5,000 units, it will achieve net operating income of 12,000. Notice that the variable cost per unit equal $8 per unit. The variable cost per unit equals $8 per unit. اوكي. الفاريبل كوست اللي هي الدايركت ماتيريال، الدايركت ليبر، والمانيفاكتشرنج اوفر هيد as variable cost، والماركتنج كوست as variable costs. Okay. To make our decision, we will rely on the available cost, as we will see in the next slide. We will here we will depend on, or we will rely on, the incremental costs and the incremental revenues. If JET accepts the special order, the incremental revenue will exceed the incremental costs. In other words, net operating income will increase by $6,000. This suggests that JET should accept, this company should accept the order. To calculate this increasing, first of all, we will calculate increase in revenue. The units of the order, 3,000 units, multiplying by the selling price of the unit of the order, $10. So the increase in the revenue will be $30,000. We will compare the increase in revenue with the increase in costs. The avoidable cost here is the variable cost. So to get the total variable costs, the increase in the variable cost, 3,000 units, these are the units of the order, multiplying by 8, which is the variable cost per unit. So the total will be 24,000. As you see, the incremental revenue exceeds the incremental costs by $6,000. So the increase in the net income will be $6,000. So our decision, that is, the company should accept the order, because accepting this order will make the company achieves increasing in net income of $6,000. Note that in this answer we assume that the fixed costs are unavoidable, and that variable marketing cost must be incurred when the special order on the special order. يبقى في الحالة دي احنا اعتبرنا الفيكسد كوست irrelevant، وبالتالي we didn't include them in our decision. Let us take one more example about the decision of whether to accept or reject a special order. It says here, Northern Optical ordinarily sells the X lens for $50. The variable production cost is $10. The fixed production cost is $18 per unit, and the variable selling cost is $1. A customer has requested a special order for 10,000 units of the X lens to be imprinted with the customer logos. The special order wouldn't involve any selling costs, but Northern Optical would have to purchase an imprinting machine for $50,000. Let's see the next page to continue this example. The question here, what is the rock bottom minimum price below which Northern Optical shouldn't go in its negotiations with the customer؟ هو هنا بيسأل يعني ايه الحد الأدنى من السعر اللي أقل منه الشركة اللي هي نورثرن اوبتيكال مش هتدخل في مفاوضات مع ايه، مع العميل دوت. يبقى هو هنا عايز الايه، الحد الادنى الذي يجب الا يقل عنه ايه، الا يقل عنه السعر. In other words, below what price would Northern Optical actually be losing money on the sale؟ وده كده برضو نفس الايه، نفس المعنى. This is the same meaning. يبقى هو عايز يحدد الحد الأدنى الذي يجب ألا يقل عنه السعر to go with this with this negotiation. There is ample idle capacity to fulfill the order, and the imprinting machine has no further use after this order. يبقى برضه هو بيديك فكرة اننا we have sufficient capacity، عندنا طاقة متاحة تسمح بان احنا ننفذ الاوردر دوت. وكمان ان الامبرنتنج ماشين اللي هي ماكينة الطباعة اللي احنا هنشتريها ليس لها استخدام اخر بعد هذا الايه، بعد هذا الطلبية او بعد هذه الطلبية. اوكي، واعطيني هنا choices $50 $10 $15 و $29. طيب to answer this question let's see the next slide. So to answer this question you have to concentrate on the relevant cost only, the relevant cost only, the costs that relate to the order. طيب which costs are relevant? Variable production cost, these costs are related to the order. وهنا ال variable production cost equal 100,000. Additional fixed cost, this cost is relevant because it relates to the order which equals 50,000 اللي هي the price of the imprinting machine اللي هي تمن شراء آلة الطباعة. Total relevant cost 150,000. To arrive at the average cost per unit, we will divide the total relevant cost by the number of units of the order. يبقى 150,000 divided by 10,000, so the average cost per unit is $15. So the right answer is $15. Okay, يبقى the minimum, the bottom minimum price below which Northern Optical shouldn't go in its negotiation with the customer equal $15. تمام يا جماعة؟ احنا بنحسبها بالطريقة دي، بنركز فقط على ال relevant cost. ال relevant cost عندي هنا اللي هي the costs that are related closely to the to the order which are variable production cost اللي هي direct material direct labor وال overhead ال variable overhead cost وال additional fixed cost لو في if it exists، لو في additional fixed cost. هنا عندي في additional fixed cost اللي هي كانت بمثابة البرايس اوف imprinting machine، تمن ماكينة الطباعة. تمام. يبقى all of them, the summation of them represents the total relevant cost. To arrive at the average cost per unit هنقسم ال total relevant cost by the number of units of the order. Okay. Now let's take an exercise about the decision of whether to make or buy a part. Larry Company makes 30,000 units per year of a part it uses in the products it manufactures. The unit product cost of this part is computed as follows: direct materials, direct labor, variable manufacturing overhead, fixed manufacturing overhead, and the unit product cost for this part equal $52.3. An outside supplier has offered to sell the company all of these parts it needs for $51.9 a unit. If the company accepts the offer, the facilities now being used to make the part could be used to make more units of a product that is in high demand. The additional contribution margin on this other product would be $219,000 per year. If the part were purchased from the outside supplier, all of the direct labor cost of the part would be avoided. However, $6.2 of the fixed manufacturer overhead cost being applied to the part would continue even if the part were purchased from the outside supplier. This fixed manufacturing overhead cost would be applied to the company's remaining products. Requirement number 1 or number A: how much of the unit product cost of $52.3 is relevant in the decision of whether to make or buy the part. Requirement B: what is the net total dollar advantage or disadvantage of purchasing the part rather than making it? What is the maximum amount the company should be willing to pay an outside supplier per unit for the part if the supplier commits to supplying all 30,000 units required each year? Okay, let's see the solution. To answer the first question, which asks about how much of the unit's product cost is relevant in the decision of whether to make or buy the part, we will determine the relevant cost only that will included in this decision. The relevant manufacturing cost consists of direct materials, which equal 15.7, direct labor, which is 17.5, variable manufacturing overhead, which is 4.5, and the only relevant fixed manufacturing overhead. The fixed manufacturing overhead which is relevant equal 8.4. You may ask, how can we compute the fixed manufacturing overhead? It says in the example, however, $6.2 of the fixed manufacturing overhead cost being applied to the part would continue even if the parts were purchased from the outside suppliers. That means the 6.2 point of the fixed manufacturing overhead is irrelevant, and the rest of these costs will be relevant. So we can compute the relevant fixed manufacturing overhead as follows. The total fixed manufacturing overhead equal 14.6. To calculate the relevant fixed manufacturing overhead, we will deduct the irrelevant cost, which equal 6.2, from the total fixed manufacturing overhead, which equal 14.6. So we will arrive at the fixed manufacturing overhead, which is relevant according to this decision. So the summation of these costs will be the relevant manufacturing cost. So the relevant manufacturing cost equal $46.1. This is the answer of the question A. Now we are going to answer question B, which asks about what is the net total dollar advantage or disadvantage of purchasing the part rather than making it. To answer this question, we will do this report. Net advantage or net disadvantage, manufacturing cost saving, which equals 1,383,000 plus additional contribution margin, which equal 219,000 minus cost of purchasing the part, which equal 1,557,000. So the result will be positive, so we will achieve an advantage. So the net advantage will be 45,000. The net advantage will be the net advantage of purchasing the part will be 45,000. Okay, let's answer the third question, which asks about what is the maximum amount the company should be willing to pay an outside supplier per unit for the part if the supplier commits to supplying all 30,000 units required each year. To answer this question, we will do this report. Maximum acceptable purchase price. We will start with manufacturing cost saving. Plus additional contribution margin, and the total benefit will be $1,602,000. To get the benefit per unit, we will divide the total benefit by the number of units that the supplier will provide them to the company, which equal 30,000. So the benefit per unit will be $53.4 per unit. يبقى كده انا قدرت احسب الايه البنفيت بير يونت. وهو في نفس الوقت بيعتبر the maximum amount the company should be willing to pay an outside supplier per unit. اوكي، يعني دي فكرة من ضمن الأفكار الخاصة بتاعة ال decision of whether to make or purchase a part. At this slide, we reached the end of lecture 10. We discussed two main decisions, which is whether to buy or make a part of a product, or whether to accept or reject a special order. يبقى احنا خدنا two decisions يا جماعة اللي احنا اتكلمنا فيهم في المحاضرة ديت، وخدنا exercises عليهم او خدنا examples عليهم، يعني يتم مراجعتهم او يتم فهمهم بشكل جيد. وهيبقى فاضل لنا محاضرة برضو هنزلها خلال النهاردة او بكرة بإذن الله. وبكده يبقى احنا انتهينا من ايه، من الشابتر دوت، وانتهينا من المحتوى العلمي اللي المفروض يوصل لكم خلال الترم الثاني. تمام، نخلص ونشوف هنعمل ايه بعد كده زي ما انا قلت لكم. بس جهزوا انتوا نفسكم، حاولوا تراجعوا المحاضرات، حاولوا يعني تنشطوا الذاكرة شوية بالحاجات اللي احنا ايه خدناها، واعتمدوا على الله في كل شيء، وان شاء الله انا متوقع خير بالنسبة للجميع بإذن الله. دعواتي لكم جميعا، ربنا يوفقكم ويحفظكم جميعا، ونلتقي على خير بإذن الله.